relative to medical admissions, et cetera, et cetera. But the point being that I also teach residents in pediatrics, not just medical students. And so in the osteopathy world, there are 3 pediatric residencies in DO. So obviously, if all of these people coming out of DO who want to get into pediatrics, they're going to be interviewing, and we interview DO students for our allopathic pediatric residency. Again, the number of medical schools far exceeds that relative to also the residency programs. But that's just a little backdrop of the differences, maybe subtle differences between DO and MD programs. In this state, you have the 3 MD schools, one here, one in Charleston, and obviously one in Greenville. So what I'm going to tell you is going to be applicable to the process. Each school might be a little different, but not in such a grand way that what I'm going to tell you today would not be applicable to maybe where you would like to apply, where you would like to go, and obviously you've got to get in. And some of you may get an acceptance in more than one school. You're going to have to decide which one you want to go to. But the point is to get you at least in one school, obviously, because you can't go to medical school if you don't get in. And I will go ahead and parenthetically say that if you don't get in the first go-around, it's not the end of the world. The average age for admission to school, and your typical college graduate that comes out is what, 21, 22, whatever. And the average age in the class is 25. So if you knew that, you can see that there are non-traditional students. They're not students that come right out of college. They're students that don't get in the first time. And they go get their master's. They have some life experiences. They need to have a gap year because they want a gap year, et cetera, et cetera. They want to add research to their profile. So my point being that if you don't get in medical school and you really want to be a physician, don't give up. In the same breath, you have to be competitive. And the competitive process for medical school, I've already mentioned one of the big ones, and that's the GPA. And so, you know, you can play the game at the 3.6, you know what that is. And that's the average, okay, average for our admission class. And that's held pretty stable for 10 to 15 years. So that's a number you can probably, you know, put in your pipe and smoke it, so to speak. Now, we do look, our school, and some other schools don't, but our school does look at the gradation of the GPA. In other words, again, you had that bad freshman semester right off the bat, and you kind of forgive that, understand that, maybe look at that. By the same token, if you're doing the reverse, I made a 4.0, and then a 3.5, and then a 3.2, and then a 2.9, meaning that as the classes got harder, your GPA went down, even though your final GPA may be a 3.4, you're doing it the wrong way. So you have to understand that the GPA is broken down and looked at, so that as, for those of you who might have had a bad first year, as the classes get tougher and your GPA improves, we look at that, and so that average GPA may not be 3.6, it may be 3.4 and 3.3, but it's going in the right direction. Understand what I'm trying to describe to you. Obviously, organic chemistry is a big one that we look at. You know, in theory, what you've got to get in your mind is kind of A's and B's. I mean, if you do a 3.6, you can't have too many C's in there because the C is going to pull that down. But you need to be thinking about pushing that AB or AB plus, etc., in terms of your undergraduate grades. And you can major in anything you want. Some prerequisites, some schools don't have any prerequisites, some have them. Our prerequisites are really to set you up to do okay on the MCAT. That's really what's behind it. It's very little. It's the organic and your biology, etc. And all of these are clearly listed on any website of any medical school. You go in and see what the prereqs are. But our prereqs are really minimal, but they're in line with this, which if nothing else, when you left tonight, in trying to do well on the MCAT, which is another part I haven't gotten to, above and beyond the GPA, is the application for medical school, it's biochemistry. That's where we're trying to get you. We're not making a requirement. We would want to, not because we're trying to be snooty, but because we're trying to help you. And if we force you to take it, then you would have to take it, and then it hopefully would help you. But we're not making it a requirement, but I would suggest to keep in the back of your mind that if you're going to come back, what course do you think I would need to take? You know, that could be extra biochemistry is kind of what we're trying to push. certainly, there are many things that can support the MCAT relative to its newness and what we're looking at. But I would just say from the scientific perspective, biochemistry would be what I would suggest, okay? In addition to the prereqs. But you can be a dance major, you can be a PE major, you can be anything you want. But obviously, most biology majors followed in that biomedical engineering, chemistry, and down the road. But you can make it anything you want. So back to the freshmen a little bit, I'd like for you to be sure that you are starting to think, if you want to go to medical school, you need to be starting now, thinking, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do, this is my commitment. This is, I understand what I'm going to have to do. Whoa, it may be, well, forget this, and half the room may leave, but I know you're away from Chick-fil-A. But at any rate, you've got to be alert to putting in the work even now, and then as you go, continuing to add to it. So that's the GPA. The second part is the MCAT that I referred to. Now this is kind of interesting because, as most of you know, we have some who've been accepted to medical school already this year, some who may have interviews coming up, some who have chosen to, again, take the gap year, et cetera, et cetera. But the MCAT is new this year, or what I mean by that, it's a new MCAT. It's not, the MCAT is not new, but it's a new MCAT, where they're looking at this psychosocial category and taking away the writing sample, which kind of went away about 2 years ago in this transition. And so everyone was saying, well, what do I need to make on the MCAT? And for freshmen, if you don't know, it's a medical college admissions test, and it's one of the things if you're going to dental school, I think you take the DAT. If you want to go to PA school, you take the GRE. I mean, there are all these tests that we look at that serve as markers for your competitiveness relative to getting in the professional school you attend. But the MCAT, of course, I know much more about simply because it's for the medical school. Although I say that and then have to back right up because this new test, we are still finding our way. We're finding our way not only here in Columbia, we're finding our way nationally because we're having to generate an n-value that is big enough for us to know exactly what those scores are going to be. I can tell you about the old MCAT, what the average was, clearly up and down and around. This new one's a little bit interesting, and we're in the process because this application year, most are applying with the new MCAT. Not all, because they could have taken the old one and still applied. But just to humor me, for most of you, if you've never taken the MCAT, you can't take the old one because it's gone. You're going to take the new one. And right now, the new one is looking, it's kind of graded on a scale, and they report scales of 2 increments like if you scored 503, that really means a 501 to a 505. I mean, that's the kind of standard deviation for any score that you get. We are looking at roughly, if you had to say to me, Stallworth, what MCAT is acceptable? Well, I'm going to have to be a little bit soft on my answer, but if you put a knife to my back and forced me to say, I would say 505. That's going to be the minimum. Okay? But it's in the context of your GPA and the rest of your application. And the trick is, the stronger you got in other parts, the more forgiving an MCAT could be. But if you forced me, I would say a 505. We started looking this year when we started the admissions process, because we start interviewing in September, at saying we were going to shoot for a 508, 507. It's kind of, that would be our mark. I think that as we've been going through it for now 4 months or so, I would say probably a 505, 506 is more realistic as that MCAT, where if you fall below it, there's going to be discussion about that relative to your application. Where if you scored above it, you know, it's not going to be a discussion that could have negative ramifications. You know, see what I'm saying? Now, that doesn't mean you